Can you imagine a product so powerful it can generate immense profit without producing anything tangible? A product so invisible that most of us use it every single day without even realizing it. That product is debt. And no, debt is not just a neutral financial tool. It has been deliberately engineered into the most profitable mechanism in human history. It has funded wars, toppled empires, enslaved entire nations, and quietly, relentlessly extracted wealth from ordinary people just like you and me. And yet, if you ask most people where debt comes from, who designed it, or why it completely dominates our financial system, they'll just shrug. They can't answer. Today we're going to change that. It all starts with a simple promise. You borrow today, and you repay tomorrow. But hidden inside that simple promise is the engine of financial control: interest. Interest is what turns time itself into profit. For thousands of years, societies have grappled with this concept. The ancient Mesopotamians recorded debts on clay tablets, but they also had a brilliant failsafe. They periodically erased all debts in jubilee cycles. They knew that if left unchecked, debt could cause their entire society to collapse. The Hebrew Bible had a similar instruction: debt forgiveness every 50 years. The lesson was crystal clear. Uncontrolled debt was a form of enslavement. Fast forward a few centuries, and the elites learned a new trick. Don't erase debt, weaponize it. In medieval Europe, the Catholic Church officially banned usury, which is charging excessive interest. But clever merchants and bankers always find a way. They disguised loans as trade contracts or invented complex financial instruments that looked like anything but a loan. During the Renaissance, powerful families like the Medici in Florence built their empires not on land or with armies, but by lending money. They financed kings, popes, and merchants, gaining not just incredible wealth, but immense political influence. Debt was no longer just a financial product. It had become a tool of raw power. But the real revolution happened in the 17th century with the invention of state debt. When the Dutch Republic was fighting for its independence from Spain, it needed money. So it started selling bonds to its citizens. Suddenly, wars were no longer limited by the gold in a king's treasury. They could be financed indefinitely by selling the future of the nation. England quickly copied this model, and the creation of the Bank of England in 1694 institutionalized national debt. From that point on, governments didn't just borrow in emergencies, they came to rely on perpetual debt, and the people who managed that debt became indispensable. Lending to the government became the safest bet in finance. The wealthy earned secure, guaranteed interest, while ordinary people, through their taxes, were the ones who ultimately paid for it. Wars that would have bankrupted kings were now financed indefinitely, which allowed empires to expand and conquer new markets. Debt created a self-reinforcing cycle. The more a nation borrowed, the richer its creditors became. By the 18th and 19th centuries, the bond markets in London, Paris, and Amsterdam were the beating hearts of global finance. Armies marched, ships sailed, and entire continents were colonized, all on borrowed money. As industrial capitalism spread, ordinary people were pulled into this system. Railroads, factories, and massive infrastructure projects were all built on credit. Workers earned wages that were funded by debt, and then they themselves began to borrow for homes, tools, and eventually consumer goods. Debt was seeping into every single layer of society. By the 20th century, debt was transformed into a consumer product. Mortgages, car loans, credit cards, and student debt normalized borrowing as a standard part of life. And here's the cruel genius of it all. Debt isn't a one-time profit. Unlike a product you buy once and you're done, debt locks you into a cycle that rarely ends. Every single interest payment is a transfer of wealth from the many to the few, month after month, year after year. A 30-year mortgage can easily cost you 2 or 3 times the original price of the house. A credit card balance, if you just roll it over month to month, can grow faster than you can possibly pay it down. What starts as a simple promise quickly becomes a trap. Debt is more than just a financial instrument. It is, without a doubt, the most successful business model in history. It requires no factories, no raw materials, no shipping. Wealth is generated simply by the passage of time, by promises, and by the magic of interest. The earliest architects of this system, the merchants of Amsterdam, The bankers of London, the financiers of Wall Street, understood this perfectly and built our entire modern financial world around it. By the mid-20th century, debt became the absolute lifeblood of global finance. The Bretton Woods agreements of 1944 institutionalized this new reality. The IMF and the World Bank were designed to lend money to nations, but always with strict conditions, structural adjustment programs that were dictated by the creditors, not by the local governments. Debt became not just profitable, but a powerful tool of political control on a global scale. In post-World War II life, banks discovered a massive, untapped market. They could sell debt directly to households. The mortgage became the centerpiece of the middle-class dream. Car loans, furniture financing, and credit cards turned debt into a consumer product, marketed just like any other. Buy now, pay later. A promise of prosperity, cleverly disguised as convenience. Interest payments created compounding profits that were almost unimaginable. Governments appeared to grow endlessly, even when wages for the average person stagnated. Corporations gained millions of customers who were spending money they didn't even have yet. Debt became the hidden engine of modern capitalism, and debt is infinitely scalable. Unlike physical goods, it doesn't require production. It only requires contracts, signatures, and the authority to create money out of thin air, from promises. And the system became addicted. Banks soon realized they preferred for debts to roll over rather than be repaid quickly. Governments discovered that borrowing was far easier than raising taxes, and central banks supplied the endless liquidity to keep the entire cycle going. By the 1970s and 80s, the consequences were becoming obvious. Developing nations borrowed heavily during the boom years, then faced impossible repayment schedules when interest rates spiked. Debt became a trap. Borrow to survive, then borrow more to repay your old loans, losing a piece of your sovereignty with each cycle. Meanwhile, financialization turned debt itself into a commodity. Mortgages, car loans, corporate bonds, all of these were bundled together and sold globally as complex securities. Debt became the raw material of modern finance. The 2008 financial crisis was a predictable, almost inevitable outcome of this system. Mortgage-backed securities collapsed. Governments bailed out the banks, and ordinary people suffered the consequences. But debt didn't shrink. It expanded. Central banks flooded the markets with even more liquidity, reinforcing the world's dependency. Debt had become indispensable, the very foundation of the global economy. Today, global debt has surpassed $300 trillion. That's more than 3 times the entire world's annual economic output. Debt has been completely normalized. Student loans, mortgages, and massive national deficits are seen as just a part of life, while inflation quietly erodes our purchasing power day by day. Debt enriches the creditor, traps the debtor, and reshapes society to benefit the few. And now, with digital currencies and programmable money on the horizon, debt is evolving once again. Loans can be algorithmically approved or denied. Interest rates can be adjusted in real time, and penalties can be enforced instantly. What looks like efficiency for the creditor often means less freedom and less mercy for the borrower. The lesson from history is clear. Debt is not neutral. It is the most profitable product ever created, turning time into money and our hopes into revenue streams. Real financial freedom begins with understanding this system, minimizing your dependence on borrowing, and recognizing that every loan is designed first and foremost to profit someone else. History repeats itself, not in exact events, but in patterns. The few get richer, the many work harder, and debt is the mechanism that keeps the cycle alive. If this perspective opened your eyes, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. History holds the answers we need for the future, and on this channel, I'll show you exactly where to look. Thanks for watching.